Hello everybody. Welcome to Tallinna Vesi's first webinar to introduce the performance of 9 months of 2013. If you face any technical problems, please don't hesitate to write them on the chat box in the right corner so we could help you. Today's webinar is hosted by the Chairman of the Management Board, Ian Blenderleith, and Chief Financial Officer, Riina Käi, who will introduce the company's results for the third quarter of 2013. Pre-sent questions will be answered straight after the presentation, and you will then have the opportunity to ask further questions. Microphone rights are disabled during the presentation. Microphone rights are enabled to all participants after the presentation. The questions will be answered on the principle of first come, first served. We will explain how to activate your microphone after the presentation. We kindly ask you to wait your turn and not to talk simultaneously. Please mute your microphone while not speaking. In case of technical issues with the microphone settings, please also write in the chat window. We will read the questions on your behalf. I will now hand it over to Ian.
Thank you very much, Marilise, and good morning everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on our quarter 3 results conference call. This is the first time we've been using the webinar service to provide this information to you. We very much hope you will find it valuable, and certainly if you have any feedback on how we can make the presentation better in future, we would certainly welcome any of your comments after, and I repeat, after we have finished today's call. If I could start first of all, before we go into the financial details, by giving everybody an update on the privatisation contract. Just as an overview, really we haven't had much change, certainly since we had our shareholders meeting earlier this year, or also since we presented our Q2 results. But just for the benefit of everybody, I'd just like to go through and just highlight once again the main points as they stand at the moment. Firstly, the services agreement is a public law contract. That means in the eyes and in the opinion of the company, it should be given all of the protection of a public law contract under Estonian law, meaning of course it should be honoured. Until the tariff dispute, the privatisation contract dispute, has been finished, current tariffs will remain in place. Investors and analysts will recall that the Competition Authority did try to reduce the company's tariffs by 29% a couple of years ago. However, the court ruled that that could not happen, and we have an injunction against that until all court proceedings are completed. Court proceedings have already started. They are partially closed, that is at the request of the Competition Authority. We'd like everybody to note that the company, which does believe in full transparency, was quite prepared to publish all aspects of our financial and operational business plan. However, the Competition Authority deemed that its own methodology was a business secret, and hence court proceedings are partially closed. I have stated that court proceedings have started, and we did actually have 2 hearings that were preliminarily scheduled for summer this year, one in June and one in August. Neither of those hearings took place, and to date we have not heard anything from the court about rescheduling either of those hearings. So really very, very little progress to report, certainly since the AGM in June. The Competition Authority claims that the privatisation contract is illegal. It has not submitted any evidence to support that. However, in fact, on the contrary, when reviewing regulatory practice applied by the Competition Authority in other areas in Estonia, particularly in Kunda as an example, one finds inconsistent and different approaches to regulatory practice. In fact, had the Competition Authority applied the same regulatory practice to Tallinna Vesi as it applies in Kunda, we wouldn't be here today talking about a privatisation contract dispute. It's a complete inconsistency in the application of regulatory practice. The Estonian government was also heavily involved in the privatisation of Tallinna Vesi, not just at a city level, but also at a national level. The government approved the privatisation contract twice, once before the privatisation in 2000, and once after the privatisation contracts were signed in 2001. It did so in written communication and verbal communication with the EBRD, and it had to approve the privatisation contract as fully legal to relinquish the financing obligations that the state had towards Tallinna Vesi at that point in time. Investors will recall that the financing obligation was a requirement of the state of Estonia at that point. Post-privatisation, it was transferred to the Strategic Investor United Utilities and Tallinna Vesi. We are at the European Union, and we've been there for a number of years. We lodged a complaint at the end of, I think it was 2010 now, so 2011 should I say, so we've been there for 2 years. A very, very slow progress. The Commission does understand our case and is supportive of the regulatory economics of our case. Operationally, we're pleased to say that we've continued to be a good corporate partner to the citizens of Tallinn and to the wider environment. In spite of the fact that our contract has been broken, we have continued to honour all our contractual obligations regarding standards of service and environmental performance. And finally, when looking at the financial returns made by the company, the real rate of return on the privatisation contract from 2001 to 2012 is 6.2%, which is not an excessive return and can be benchmarked against returns permitted by other regulators across Europe. Certainly as I look at the returns permitted by the UK regulator and also the Dutch regulator, you are also seeing returns in the region of 6 to 7% real. So it is not possible to claim that the privatisation contract has enabled excessive returns to be made by the privatising party. That's my overview of the contract and some of the key highlights. I think I would just reiterate before handing on to Rina that really we've had very, very little progress in the quarter. Things very, very stable, and it certainly looks as if court proceedings will continue to move at a slow pace. Thank you very much for listening. I'll certainly be here to take some questions at the end of the call, and I'll now hand.
Thank you, Ian, and good morning to everyone as well. Now I would like to give you the overview of the financial performance of Tallinna Vesi during the 9 months in 2013. I start with the financial highlights and then will give more detailed overview about sales and cost further on. Compared to 9 months in 2012, the sales have been relatively flat, increasing only by €95,000 or 0.2% in 2013. Our gross profit has decreased by €1.9 million, which is 7.9% less than last year. Also, our operating profit from main activities is at the lower level by €1.10 million, which is 8.7% less than the comparative period last year. The biggest impact on costs, and therefore also for gross profit and operating profit, comes mostly from increased pollution tax. The biggest part of it is related with an incident in wastewater treatment plant in April 2013, the topic that we already covered when we introduced our semi-annual results. The profit before tax is behind last year's 9 months results only by €35,000, 0.2%, amounting to €18.4 million. Decrease in operating profit is mostly compensated by the change in fair value of swap contracts. Now let's move on to the next slides and I will comment on the changes a bit closer. Let's start with the sales. As mentioned before, the total sales revenues have been quite flat year on year, being ahead only by €95,000. Total revenues of water and wastewater services were by €0.1 million higher than in 2012, amounting to €35.6 million. Whilst the consumption in domestic sector has declined by 0.9% compared to the comparative period from last year, there has been an increase in commercial sector and outside areas, which balances the shortage in domestic sales. Partly the decline in domestic revenues comes from the fact that last year's comparative period was 1 day longer than this year. At the same time, there has been a 2.2% increase in commercial sector within Tallinn, which came mostly from industrial customers. If the contractual tariffs would have been applied, the revenues from Tallinn would have been €4.08 million higher. The slight decrease in outside area sales in the amount of €96,000 is also mainly the result of decreased stormwater volumes. The revenues from the sales of wastewater services in the outside areas are up by €61,000 or 2.2%, whilst the stormwater revenues in the same area is down by €158,000 or 32%. The increase in the sales of other works and services by €500,000 to €1.2 million comes from the bigger sales from pipeline construction and design. Increase in this line has affected also related cost of goods sold. This now takes us to the overview of costs. The company's total operating costs have increased by €2.01 million compared to the comparative period in 2012. Main impact to cost comes from an increase in cost of goods sold, which are on its own, as already mentioned before, highly influenced by an increase of pollution tax expense. Firstly, in the first quarter of 2012, there was a release of pollution tax provision, which had a one-off impact in the amount of €436,000. Secondly, in April 2013, and thereafter, there have been a couple of small incidents in wastewater treatment plant. At the time of the incidents, for the short period of time, not all the wastewater could have been treated, and that itself resulted in an increase in pollution tax with additional income tax expense. Due to the incidents, the company was liable for a high pollution tax rate, to which extra income tax was added. Therefore, the company faced extra costs of €1.3 million. Increase in other cost of goods sold is related to the increased pipeline construction and design revenues, accompanied by some extra maintenance work. Other than that, costs are quite in line. There is a slight increase in chemical costs due to the increase in prices that were balanced by the lower volumes. Marketing and general admin costs stayed mostly flat during 9 months in 2013. Overall cost increase by €0.05 million or 1.1%. Our legal costs have still not come down as we still have ongoing tariff dispute. Net financial revenues have increased by €1.9 million year on year due to positive movement in fair value of interest rate swap agreements. When we are just going further on our cash, then our cash balance as of 30th of September 2013 was €24.6 million, showing an increase of €0.6 million compared to the balance as at year end, and €8 million compared to the 30th of September 2012. In the first 9 months, we generated €21.6 million cash from operating activities, which is €3 million less than in the first 9 months in 2012. The main contributor to the operating cash flows comes from the operating profit, which was €2 million lower than in the comparative period last year. Also, change in working capital has influenced the decrease in generated cash. The cash flow from investing activities is €2.6 million higher, mainly related to loan repayment by Tallinna Vesi, which was €3.8 million, reduced by less received compensation for pipes, €3.6 million. Our own investments into fixed assets have been also at slightly lower level than in 2012, which were at a lower level by €2.1 million. In 2013, we have not granted any new loans. The cash flows used in financing activities are mainly influenced by bigger dividend payment and tax paid on top of it. Thank you for your time and attention, and all your questions are really welcome now.
So, so before we get started with questions, I will explain how to activate your microphone. Microphone icon will appear as we enable the microphone for all participants. In order to ask questions, please activate your microphones as follows. Click on the microphone icon, choose Connect My Audio, and click Allow. The microphone is active when the icon is green. To adjust the volume, please once again click on the microphone icon, adjust microphone volume. Please mute your microphone while not speaking by clicking on the microphone button. We have one question before the presentation, but it was covered by Ian at the beginning. So it was about the court case. Do we have any questions now? I see Jaak Roosaare is typing. Can you use your microphone? Does anybody have questions? Okay, so I will read it. There was news that TVIT has a monopoly now until 2025. Any chance that...
Okay. In plant-based speaking, just for clarity, what Tallinna Vesi has now until 25 is an extension of the license to operate only. That just means the company has been nominated as the water company in the area of Tallinn. Nothing more than that. It has nothing whatsoever to do with revenues or tariffs. Does that answer your question, Jaak?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we see one question coming up. Let's wait it. So question from Peter Priisel. Could you give more flavor what was behind the incident with water treatment? Ian will answer.
I will answer. It was actually an issue at the wastewater treatment plant. We had some problems during the summer months, especially with some of the very, very significant summer storms that we had, when there was an awful lot of, well, certainly an awful lot of storm water coming through, and an awful lot of dirt that was washed into the system and into the wastewater treatment plant. As a consequence of the excessive flows and the excessive pollution loads, we had to operate a slightly different regime, which has increased the pollution tax. It is entirely related, as I say, to summer storms and very, very heavy flows. And we have taken account of this and will be actually putting in place a new operating regime so we do not suffer the same problems next summer. Is that okay? Thank you.
There is one more question. Could we expect this to be repeated? Could you answer that one?
I think I've just answered that one. Largely it's related to summer flows and very heavy summer storms. So certainly if we didn't take action, then yes, we'd have the same problem next summer. But we are taking action already. Summer storm.
Possible to buy insurance against these kind of incidents, as I understand, yeah?
I couldn't activate my microphone, I'm sorry. Yes, there is a limit up to which you can buy insurance against it, and we have covered it to up to the maximum limit, which is 150,000 euros, and we have claimed, made a claim to the insurance company, and just a couple of days before, we're expecting to get some amount back. But this is a limited market in this field.
Question from Jaak Roosaare. Has Tallinna Vesi considered buying back shares instead of paying dividends in order to save on taxes?
Ian, I'll take this one. No, we haven't, Jaak, and unfortunately, certainly any of our actions at that level are constrained by the shareholders' agreement between United Utilities and the City of Tallinn, neither of which can change its shareholding without the express agreement of the other. So looking at things like that is not really something we can do unless we can get proper political support from the main two shareholders.
Okay, thank you. Seems to be one more. Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay. Veiko is typing, so let's hear. You can also use your microphones, you don't have to type. Veiko is asking, so has Tallinn so far declined to share buybacks?
We've never asked them.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? So I will ask once again. Yeah, seems to be coming up. So Roman is asking, is there more room to decrease costs?
We're always just working on our costs, and we are trying to find the most efficient way of operating the company. Therefore, we are looking into every single income statement line, every single expense line, and we are doing everything possible in order to keep our costs under the best control what we can do. And if we can find efficiencies through automation or anything else, we are doing that, and we are controlling our costs in the best way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? I think there are no more questions. If you have any following questions, you can send them via email as well. And we have recorded today's webinar, and we will publish it after the webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Have a nice day.